This composer has never courted popularity, colon. Her rugged modernism seems to defy rather than to dash the audience. So when I read this question, I notice two things. One is a colon. I know that colon indicates an exclamation, and I notice the contrast word rather than. I can choose to look at either of them. I find rather than much easier. So to defy rather than to dash. To defy is to go against, to rebel against, to not follow the instructions of. So in the blank, I'm going to look for a word which is the opposite of defy. Right? So I'm looking for a word which means something along the lines of to go along with, to try to please, to not rebel against. Right? So let's go through the choices. If you ignore the audience or if you discount the audience, either way, you're going against them. You are still defying them. You're not doing the opposite. To woo the audience, you're trying to actively please them. So this fits the context I'm looking for. To teach the audience becomes a little irrelevant. To cow the audience in this context means to get scared, which is not what we're looking for in the context at all. So woo becomes the correct answer here because we're talking about actively wanting to please the audience. She wants to defy, she wants to rebel against instead of actively trying to please the audience. If I read the part before the colon, I get a further hint that my answer is correct. She has never courted popularity, which means she has never tried to be popular. She has never tried to get the people to like her. So it makes sense that she has tried to defy rather than woo the audience.
The sight of a single actor portraying several characters in the same scene is no longer a shock to the average moviegoer, such special effects trickery having become so dash. I focus on the keyword no longer. When is something no longer the case? When earlier it was, right? So here, when would you find something not shocking at all? When it's perfectly normal, perfectly natural, perfectly everyday. So in the blank, I'm looking for a word which means normal, natural, everyday, common, boring. Right? So let's take a look at the choices. If it is expensive, it wouldn't be everyday or boring. So I can strike that out. If it's specialized, it wouldn't be everyday or boring. If it's sinister, it would be dangerous. Again, not everyday or boring. If it's commonplace, yes, it would be everyday, natural, and therefore would not shock you. So commonplace is the correct answer. And unreliable doesn't fit the context here because unreliable and being common have nothing to do with each other. Early studies often concluded that the public was dash the propagandistic influence of mass comm. But one recent study indicates that, on the contrary, mass comm seldom produces many changes in social attitudes or actions. So when I read this question, I notice 4 key phrases: early, but, recent, on the contrary. Now all of these are contrast words and all of them are leading you in the same direction. That earlier the studies said something else about how mass comm influenced the public opinion, and now the studies are saying something else. Naturally, the two things are going to be opposites, right? So I know what the studies are saying now, that mass comm seldom produces any change. So now we believe that mass comm has no influence in public actions or opinions or whatever. Which means earlier they must have shown that the public was influenced by mass comm. So I'm looking for a word in the blank which means to be influenced by. Right. So being aware of has no connection with being influenced by. Being scornful of has no, it doesn't mean being influenced by. Susceptible to. Now if you're susceptible to something, you will take it. You will be affected by it. So susceptible to is my correct answer. If you are unimpressed, again you're not affected by it. If you're coping with something, again you're not affected by it. So this leaves me with C as the only answer. Once I plug it in, it makes sense. Because earlier we were saying that the public was affected by or was susceptible to what the mass comm was making them believe. But now they don't. And that's the contrast.